Hey guys, this is Kentucky Fathers. This is one of my first podcasts for this first recordings for this podcast. And again, what I do is just talk to people about their fathers, their whole perspective on fatherhood and how their fathers, regardless of the relationship with their father, good, positive, good, bad, or ugly, how it's impacted them as an individual and their whole perspective on fatherhood. I have with me two guys who I go way back with, elementary school. And I'm going to say
50 years.
I was about to say, Stud, do not put a date on this because, put years on this. But you can always, you can always depend on the Stud. And yeah, I mean, we go way back and guys, we're so different. Our backgrounds are different culturally, racially. I mean, we're so different. And I was reflecting on, why are we so connected to one another? It's really just, to me, it's really a spiritual connection. It's really a spiritual connection. But let me get off that. I'm not real good on theology or spirituality and things like that. We're here to talk about fathers. And I got about 15, 20 minutes with you guys. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to Albert first. Doug, you pop in whenever you want and just talk to Albert. Albert, you were born in Costa Rica, is that correct?
I was born in the beautiful latitudes and longitudes of Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we obviously didn't meet you there. We met you here in Louisville, Kentucky. How is it that a young soul from Costa Rica got to Kentucky?
It's a beautiful thing because it ties into the topic of fatherhood. My family of origin blew up because of the behavior of my father and also the responses of my mother. So I call them aunt and uncle, which you guys met later on.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle, Quito, he stepped in as a friend and a father figure. So when he moved to the States, my aunt and uncle, my brother and I had been staying with, decided to bring us and give us an education and take care of us while my mom got herself together. So that was the original plan. It was a way for my brother and I to have a chance at a better life, and it was the ethical and the beautiful vision of my uncle Quito that provided us with that opportunity that opened up worlds for me. So he, in that sense, was a old school father. He took on a responsibility. He was diligent. He looked out for us. And that's how I ended up in Kentucky. It's a response to a family of origin blow up.
Mm-hmm. So your parents, when you say blew up, are you saying your parents divorced?
Yeah, there was they just they were young people in love, not ready for parenting, I think. And when the challenges came in the relationship and their communication styles and the way they behave toward each other, it was very destructive for them both, and it affected me and my younger brother. So my aunt, who was like the matriarch of the family, did not tolerate what we were experiencing, physical violence, mental violence, and she took us under her wing with the consent of this man, Quito. And I remember the first time I met him, I was a shy little boy, and he just looked at me and my brother. He goes, "Who are these beautiful little princes?"
Mm.
And right away, the way he said it, that the love in his heart.
Wow.
I trusted him.
Wow. Let me switch down here to Doug. Every so often I refer to him as Stud, so I just want my audience to know that. Stud, you're
let them know that this isn't because of our personal intimacy.
Well,
Just your fond nickname for me.
you know,
I was getting to, I didn't get much into that area. That's too
Albert, I've been putting up with this for elementary
so school. You're lucky, man.
Into elementary school. I'm telling you. If I ever write a book, he's got like 4 or 5 chapters already. You know that. Okay, so Stud, you're beginning. You were born here in Louisville, Kentucky. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and just generally, just talk about your mother and father, your family situation.
Here, and both my parents have regretfully passed. You met them. My parents were extremely. It's funny. I start to talk about them, and it makes me choke up just. But extremely dear people. Mm-hmm. They had fantastic hearts. They were. It was something about them that you didn't want to disappoint them. That kept us in line more than anything. There was 5 of us, and none of us got any real serious trouble. Things that there are things we probably did that could have been bad news, and nothing, no felonies or anything like, but typical mischievous. That probably some things were against minor laws when we were kids. But I don't really know how to describe it. You didn't want to disappoint them. They loved you so much, and they had such high expectations, and they're so forgiving. You hated to let them down. And a quick example, I got, mom and dad went out to dinner, and hey, I know how to get the car started. And me and some friends went out, and we're driving home, and I'm like, oh crap, they're home early. And I looked back to tell the guys, like 4 of them, hey, here's what we're going to do. Well, they had already bailed. I'm like, oh, the doors are open. They're gone. So I just pull up in front of the house, and they're waiting at the door for me. And their look was as devastating as anything they could have done. Mm-hmm. So I walked back to my room, and I went to bed. Apologized first. It was never spoken of again. And guess what? I never took the car out again. Wow. So that's interesting. Now, I'm not saying that works for everybody. Obviously, it doesn't. But they had such love in their heart for us. And we were a family of 7 in a 900 square foot house. Mom stayed at home. We didn't have any money. I didn't realize how relatively poor we were until I got much older. But Dad grew up without a father. His dad became ill when he was less than 6 years old. My grandmother spent many years trying to find a cure for him, and they couldn't. And it was a disease that eventually ate away at his brain. And so my dad didn't see him from the time he was 6 until he passed away the year of my birth, I think in 1959. Wow. And he was institutionalized. So the only thing that helped them is that his dad was a prominent architect and had invested in good disability insurance. And oddly, the worse the depression became, the better off they were because they had a fixed income. And so that got them through some early financial issues. But that's it. I never had a father that was the kind that, hey, we're going to get you into sports. You're going to play football. You're going to play baseball. Yeah, you want to work on the car? Let's go do this. Here's how we build this and that, because he didn't have those examples. But my dad was a paradigm of integrity and honesty. It's funny. In my whole life, I think I heard my dad cuss 3 or 4 times. Wow. And, nothing bad. Now, my mom, when she got mad, she could let go, believe it or not. You remember how sweet she was. she could. We knew her in trouble when Mom started cussing. And another thing I'll say about my father is, it's a lesson I learned. When he said, to stop it, you had maybe 2 chances to stop it. And on the 3rd time, the belt came off. Now, people will be shocked today. Oh, my God, you got hit with the belt. Yeah, like about 3 times in my whole life. He'd aim for the ass, the rear end, didn't always hit it. But, we were never abused. You're talking once or twice. But what I learned was Dad means what he says, and he says what he means. And so the fact that he didn't have to use it very often was because we knew he would, and nobody wanted that. Like today, I guess he'd be considered a brutal man, but he wasn't. He's one of the gentlest men I knew. Yeah. But his discipline, his word, there was iron in his words, as the chief said to Clint Eastwood in the outlaw Josie Wales. And there was much iron as there was honesty and truth and forgiveness and gentleness. So I learned that, you don't give your kids 50 reasons and empty exultations to stop doing whatever your punishment is. I spanked my kids. I never used a belt on them, but you had to sort of let them know that you're disciplined and let them know why. And more importantly, I don't think I ever disciplined out of anger, maybe once or twice. In other words, I was angry, but I wasn't in a rage punishing my kids.
Yes.
And that's my recollection. Maybe I've filtered my recollections. But there may have been one or two times when they made me angry and I punished them or spanked them or whatever out of that, but not often if I did.
Right. Albert, talk, I've known you, well, thanks to Doug, we know, everybody knows how long I've known you, but.
Actually 51 years to be more accurate.
There you go. It struck me, Albert, we never talked about your father. You never told me anything about your father. So,
yeah.
I
can say a couple of things. All of them are gone, both my adopted parents, or what I call my bonus parents, and my biological parents. The thing with my dad was that I loved him. I loved him deeply. I thought he was super, super cool. He was a fun guy, charismatic, charming, he could sing. He definitely had a lot of positive traits. But when he drank, he turned into somebody that was cruel and violent and very, very destructive to himself and to other people. So when the family broke up, I still had all this unresolved emotion about what had happened to me. And it took me, several decades to really integrate it in a wholesome way. So I didn't see my dad for about 12 years, maybe 10 years after he came to the States, because I wanted to see him. And because I felt that I needed to connect with him. I felt he had betrayed me. A lot of my anger toward him throughout the decades was because I felt he created this trust, and then he betrayed it by by the way he behaved towards me physically, and also the way he behaved towards my mom physically, and a lot of things he did that totally created an unstable environment for me. So I did not resolve that almost till his death. But I would say I resolved it a few days before he died. Because he called me. I'm skipping a lot, but so I always looked for my dad. I always wanted to connect. I always wanted to heal the rage I felt towards his betrayal, and it went in different stages, man. I think I finally got to a place where I was really consciously working on it, like in my 30s. Because I was always interested in psychology, therapy, philosophy, mysticism, and through those venues, I was aware that I had some work to do around that. And he wanted the connection too. I think that the redeeming part about my father was that he understood what happened. He wanted to connect with me, and he wanted to leave me a positive experience of him. So a couple of days before he died, he called me, and he said, "I don't think I have much longer. I wanted to tell you that I love you." And I said, "I love you too." And I said to him, "I need something from you." And he said, "What is that?" Now you gotta remember, my dad was kind of narcissistic and very vain. I don't want to take up too much space in this, but I said, "I need you to apologize to me." And he goes, "Apologize for what?" And I go, for the violence you put in my body and in my mind. And he goes, "But without that, you would have been the good man that you are." And I said, No, man. I had to work so much to let go of that. That created more conflict in my life than not. And he stepped back and he goes, and I could hear it in his heart. He goes, "I am so sorry." I'm getting choked up about it.
Wow.
you
Was the
know,
sincerity and the emotion you never had, I guess, from him at that point?
no, no. He always loved me, man.
Or the regret, maybe. I don't know, the verbalized regret.
I felt like he needed to say it, and I felt it took a lot of him to say it because he was a very proud guy, you know, and for him to release and connect with me.
You feel like it was cathartic for him at the end too? I mean,
yeah,
he did do, yeah. Made his journey easier.
It made, you know, and that was the thing about my other dad, that I think if I had not been brought up in that other environment, I could have been mean and cruel to my dad, you know, when he on his deathbed, you know, and say, well, this is, you know, I didn't. I had another education, and from my own heart, I didn't want that either. So, so that turned out okay, man. That whole trajectory turned out all right because of who I was, and also because of the education my other father.
You know, as a counterpoint to that, Alberto, my father was an alcoholic, but he was a high functioning alcoholic. But in that, I mean, I don't know that he ever missed a day of work in 38 years. And if anything, he became more gentle and more enjoyable to be around than he was when he was not drinking, which was seldom. I mean, my recollections of him not having some amount of alcohol in his system is rare. I mean, when I look back on it, at least in the mornings, he was fine like that. But, you know, by the weekends, and by the time I'd see him at home, you know, I'd see him come home after work, he'd already stopped by the pub and been there for an hour and had a few. So, but it never, you know, he was never mean to us. He was gentle. He's a great guy. But it affected us when I look back financially, because so much of his money went to his habit, so to speak. And, you know, because he would, I mean, this is a time when he was an executive, but he'd have 3-4 drinks at lunch. Again, he was a highly regarded person in his profession. And some very nice things were written about him when he retired from HAS. But I know, looking back, that there were some unresolved issues with me and how it affected us growing up in ways that it's hard to put you can point to the black eye or the abuse or the beatings or the yelling or that. We didn't have any of that.
Well, you know, I mean, can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
There's a guy named James Hillman who is into Jungian psychology and analytical psychology, and his take on it was that sons have a couple of options when it comes to the father. They either emulate their good behavior, or they take on the father's shadow. In other words, all the things that the father withheld, the son will either take him on himself and behave in certain ways that reflect the father's shadow, or they'll totally reject the father's shadow. Yeah. So I don't know, if you say, I don't know how that fits into your life, but I know a lot of the choices that I made were not to be like him. So I did not want to take on his shadow, whatever it was that was driving him to be who he was when he was in a negative space.
Right. I guess I did as a father and as a man, I tried to absorb the best of my father, which was the majority of him. To this day, you know, when you're making decisions, how would dad feel about this choice, or mother? And it guides you throughout your life until, you know, it becomes a part of your core anyway, and it's reflexive. You still, dad going to be proud of this, or mom. But the other thing was, I'm also aware of if there's a drinking gene, you know, an alcoholism gene in you, I'm aware of it in my own life that I don't drink much. I mean, when I was a teenager or a young adult, I certainly drank probably as much as anybody else, but I became aware also of my propensity. For example, my wife said, asked me this a couple of years ago, do you want a drink? And I said, yeah. And I said, she goes, well, I'll make you one. She says, no, I don't want one. She goes, why not? He said, because I really want one. What I meant was, it was a craving rather than just a desire to relax. And if I got to that where I was craving it, you know, I might, you know, so I wouldn't have one. So show myself, you don't have to have this. And there were times I'd go, you know, months and months without drinking. And then there are times I might have a bourbon at night, and 4 or 5 nights in a row. And then I tell you, I'm not having another one. You know, I've done this 4 nights in a row. I don't want to get to where I like it too much. So it's just an awareness of not wanting to fall in whatever trap my dad did with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Know so much.
He's affected me in positively in both ways, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, we know so much. I mean, was it medication? Was it, maybe you just liked it? And I'm just glad you had a positive experience of it consistently, because it does matter. It does matter how. I think the emotional availability of the father is really what sets up our response to them and guides our own character. You have a father that's distant, that creates conflict. If you have a father that's too involved, that also creates conflict. It's a balance, it's a balance. A lot of my work when I was doing heavy counseling, especially with addiction, a lot of the men, part of that was just being reparented. Part of it was showing up with them in a way that was consistent and clear and still affectionate, where they had a sense of themselves, of what they could be. Because typically, a lot of the addiction that I saw was tied to intimacy. It wasn't necessarily the physiological causal agent.
Mm-hmm.
They were not seen by the parental figures in their development. So I think part of what makes a good parent is really seeing who your child is and who that adult is, and respecting the differences and cultivating the good in them and sharing your wisdom as to what might not be really meant. But there is a necessary differentiation, I think, that needs to take place as well.
Albert, there's two things you said I wanted to follow up with you, and then there's a couple of things with you too, Doug. You said that you always had and don't let me put words in your mouth, you had almost this hunger to connect with your father. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, it was definitely a hunger. It was a need to hold him accountable. Now you got to remember that I'm speaking about this as an adult male who's integrated the experience, and I'm articulating it in a way where it's already resolved. But at the time, all I felt was this need to connect with him. I didn't have the total vocabulary or the conceptual vocabulary to understand that drive. So yeah, I needed to resolve what I thought was the betrayal, and he welcomed it. He welcomed me in his life. He wanted to be my dad. He wanted to be part of it. He tried. He just, by the time we got to that stage in our relationship, I had already been living in the States a while. I'd gone to high school here. I think it was early in my college years, so I really had no interest anymore in going back to Nicaragua and doing this bonding thing. So the bonding and the resolution took place at different periods of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the drive was there, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, and before we actually started recording this whole interview, I guess you might say, you had mentioned that you never had children. Is that a conscious decision on your part, or do you think some other things was going on in your?
No. There were some unfortunate events. I mean, there was one woman when I got out of grad school that I was involved with in New Orleans, and she didn't want it. We got pregnant, and she didn't want it. But that was very, very painful for me. She wanted to travel and do art and all of that. So that hurt. That took me a while to get over because I did have the parenting impulse. And then a few years back, someone that I love very much, we got pregnant. I was very happy about it, and we lost it. Mm-hmm. So it just, every now and then I have this crazy fantasy that I'll be one of those old rich guys with a 30-year-old partner, and I'll have our kids, but that's just, I don't think it's going to happen. My current partner is also someone who's an artist, and her path is her art, so she doesn't want to have children. So it doesn't look that way. And I think, when I look back on it, I've been a father to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, both men and women, in some way, symbolic, or actually showing up for them, taking care of them. But it's not like you guys, man. There's a whole different kind of emotional involvement around it. That there's a depth to it that I don't experience. However, I've tried to compensate or fulfill that need through my work in community and with people.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Now, Doug, I know, things about you that I don't know if you really want to bring out, but I remember when your first marriage, it sort of struck me how you just had this drive to be a father.
Yeah.
Where do you think that was coming from, Stud?
It wasn't anything I actively looked for, Corbin. But I honestly, I fell in love with my kids, my ex-wife's kids.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, can I interject for a second? I remember you telling me that. You sent me a letter, or it was something, a phone call or a photograph, telling me exactly that you were already so committed to the kids that you weren't sure about the longevity with a partner, but you knew you were in for the kids, man. We're going back like 40 years.
And they loved me, and they were, and I felt, their biological dad and our friends to this day. I wasn't trying to usurp his role, but they very early in our relationship, they would call me daddy. And I'm like, we weren't married, but I didn't mind it because I liked that. I guess it gave me direction in some ways. I felt like if I get married to this woman, I'm going to be responsible for these kids. And I'll touch on it again in a second, but I mean, that was a major reason I got married. And I'm not trying to disparage my ex-wife because she's a dear woman. But probably had the kids not been involved, we might not have got married. She's a great person. We didn't really have as much in common as we should have to be life partners. And that, eventually that just came to the surface. But I love those children, and it made me not only be better person, it made me want to be a better person. I now had a reason and a drive to succeed financially as best I could, because I was going to take care of those kids. It gave me purpose. And I was sort of drifting in what I wanted to do as far as it took me 10 years to get my degree, my undergraduate degree, because I would go to school, partly because I paid my way. One of the things my parents said to us, all 5 of your kids are going to college. Oh, that's great. By the way, you're all paying for it. And so, I would work and I'd drop out, and we all moved out pretty early, most of us, because we were, 7 people in a 900 square foot house. So we wanted our own space. Nothing against my parents, just wanted more room. So I put struggles on myself I probably could have done without, is financially. And so, but having those kids think, all right, I got to get things moving. I moved out of the country 2 different times, if you recall. Great experiences I wouldn't do without. But the kids made me think, all right, I got to start focusing, get my degree, get out of here and take care of my family. And as a man, personally, this may be simplistic, but I think women and families crave 3 things: security. They want financial security, emotional security, and physical security. And those things drove me to provide for my family, so I could provide them with all of those. And also I love them deeply. I mean, I never think of they weren't adopted; they're just stepkids, as anything other than my biological kids. The difference with them and my biological child is the emotional bond and love was instantaneous, and that's something. It's maybe hard for people to understand what I'm saying until you've experienced it. You can't imagine your wife's been growing this child, but the moment it comes out and there she is, he is, it's an sort of ineffable instant emotional bond that I can't explain, that never goes away. Now I think my other kids I have that same bond with, but it's something that developed it. But with my biological was instantaneous, and it drives. If you're, in my opinion, if you're a worthy man, it should be your drive. That should drive you to be a better person in all ways once you have kids.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. Some of the things you said there, Stud. I'm thinking that's Mr. Sweeney, because if I sat there, I watched it. He provided for you guys, like you said. Mrs. Sweeney, she didn't work most of the time. I remember one time she had a little job at some little newspaper.
Yeah, The Voice.
Yeah,
that was after Rick. That was after, not until Rick was in school. and she was able to do a little bit, and especially when he could be left alone at home.
Right. You know.
Which was, yeah. So
I mean,
I know you're the host of this podcast, and I mean, I don't know what your role is here. Is it just strictly as an interviewer, or do you want to disclose something about the experience of your dad and how dad has had his?
Well, for me, you know, I guess right now my primary role is just to facilitate, you know, the interviewer.
Yeah.
You know,
we're throwing up anecdotes and recollections, but I don't know if you're looking for it, like Albert. Maybe Albert's trying to get to you. Is there some sort of cohesive piece of advice that, yeah, this is what makes a great dad? Because I'm not sure I know that. I don't think there's a secret. I think you just try to be the best person and example of of integrity and love and compassion and you know, and all reforms, like just my dad was a tremendous example of work ethic.
Yes.
Too. As an alcoholic, I never remember him missing a day at work.
No.
He went to work. He went to work and provided for us in the best way he could, even though we didn't have a lot of money, because he kept our mother home. And when I got married, after our child was born, our biological, I worked hard so my wife could stay home.
Right.
That was how I was raised, and having a constant parental presence, I think, it helps kids. It's not always possible, but I think it's a positive alternative to, you know, both being having latchkey kids. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I see that. I saw that clearly with Mr. and Mrs. Sweeney. I'll always remember that. And you know, with you, Albert, your uncle was a psychiatrist, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, I think I naturally came with an inquisitive mind and a curiosity, and just my baseline sense of well-being contained curiosity and just a deep appreciation for life. I mean, I like being alive just as an animal, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I think growing up in an environment that had books and music and all of that just fed that curiosity, and also it allowed me to really explore questions of you know, maturation, growth, and development, probably in a way that I would not have had if I had remained in Costa Rica. I mean, my brother and I, Greg, you guys remember Greg? You know, I used to talk about it, and what our lives would have been like had we stayed with a dad and mom, or just a mom over Tito and Layla. And definitely the opportunities that Layla and Tito provided were.
Alberto, let me ask you, would your essence, I mean, and we always think of you as sort of mystical and a bit of a shaman and your spiritual journey and intellectual journey, without your father, your uncle / adopted father, would you be the same person you are now, or do you think that would have still found its way to the surface, or was he crucial in that?
He was crucial in that, brother. There's no way around it, because, you know, something showed up for me that I hadn't thought about. And so this conversation actually is taking me to another level of depth with it. Tito never really treated me as his son. There was some affection. He was more like, okay, you know, I'm going to help these guys out. So I think he was a good Christian man in that sense. And he offered caritas, you know, it's a form of charity, a form of devotion, and difference between. So he provided me with an environment. As soon as he realized that I liked music, he bought me the entire time collection of classical music.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. If I wanted to play music, he bought me a guitar. You know, if I wanted to read something. I remember asking him after I finished my degree in psychology, and I wanted to go on. I said, look, I can get some financial support, but I still need your support. I want to go into philosophy. And I was really, really scared to do it, because I knew that philosophers end up, janitors somewhere, or I mean,
right.
So I was afraid, because I didn't want to let him down either, but I had such a curiosity around it. And he just looked at me and he goes, okay, that's what you really want to do right now? And I go, yeah. And he was cool with it, you know? So he was somebody that was like guiding me along and trying to show up for me. Now, the difference between him and my dad, though, that you guys made me aware of, is that whenever Quito did something that maybe violated a boundary, he never really apologized for it. my dad, and I was, had the decency and the insight to apologize to him. And I think that's very interesting. So we're talking about fatherhood and showing up and all of that. I think if you're a father, the ability to say, "Wait a minute, I got this wrong. I hurt you somehow. I'm learning. I apologize." I think that's a big deal between parents and children.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have to agree with that, brother. I remember something happened between my daughter and I, and her mother. I was in counseling with her mother, marriage counseling. We're trying to keep the marriage together. And I said, "Oh, well, I apologize to Sarah about that." And, and then we just went on talking about whatever we did. And afterwards, the counselor sort of pulled me to the side and he said, "Man, I was really impressed with that, because I find it difficult to apologize to my children, to admit to them I'm wrong." Mm-hmm. And I was just sort of surprised at that. The guy's a minister, he had a doctorate. And I was sort of surprised at that. But he said that to me. He said, I find it hard to do that. And I was really impressed that you're able to do that.
Me too, man, especially for a minister, because in these fields, man, you really can't facilitate growth past your own. You can't facilitate growth past your own. So when you're in that counseling field, or even as a parent, the more you grow and the more you expand, the more you take the people with you. So I'm a big advocate of you have some gains from your experience, you're mature, but that doesn't mean you have it all down.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, it's like when Doug reflected, when he started saying, "Hey, now I've got these responsibilities. I need to turn things around for myself." I'm telling you, I was a totally different guy. I mean, there's only 3 places I went to when I was married with, 2 kids. I went to church, I went to the library, and I went to work. And I remember at work, they one time said something to me about, "Hey, if you had $1 million, you can go anywhere in the world, where would you go?" I said, "To go back home." Mm-hmm. Go back home.
Well, can I know you're the interviewer, but I have this irresistible question. What that you don't have to answer right now, or you can answer privately. I think, what do you think are your biggest contributions, your biggest contributions to your daughters right now at this stage of your relationship?
Well, we really haven't been.
You guys should be doing the interview, man.
I may not be answering this right, because I may not clearly understand what you're saying. My daughter and I were very close, did a lot together, up to about when she was about age 13, 14.
You have 2 daughters, though, right?
No, just Sarah.
Just Sarah, okay.
Yeah, just Sarah. And her mother and I divorced at age when she was 8 or 9. And then we came even closer as far as time together, doing things together, etc., up to about when she reached age 14, 15. And then she sent me 2 letters. And she literally just said, "Daddy, I don't want to see you anymore." That was it. No reason, just said that. And then a little bit, yeah, man. But a little bit later, she said, "Daddy, I don't want to see you. I told you I don't want to see you anymore. And no one's telling me to say this to you."
Sounds like her mom or dad's prompting him, or mom is prompting her to say, "Hey, by the way, let them know you're not being influenced."
Right. That's exactly what other people have said. Yeah. So, and that was that. So from there on, it was just a battle just to be involved in her life to do. And then her mother moved away about an hour away. And so I just did everything I could do to keep myself involved in her life. I mean, I just did everything and anything I could do. Then family court sort of squashed that out.
That's an emotional chasm, Corbin, that still breaks my heart for you.
Yeah, man, I'm hearing you say it, and the sadness and the tone in your voice is really moving, man. I'm sorry you're experiencing that kind of loss. But I'm sorry, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I tell you, when I was seeing Sarah on a regular basis, I would freak out if I didn't see her for 3 days. I mean, I would freak out. Where's my baby? I can't, I would just freak out. And I didn't care what her mother would say to me. If her mother was to say to me, okay, I'm going to make a way for you to see her, but you have to see her in Antarctica and you have to be buck naked. I would probably just picked up the phone, called my sister, or called Doug and say, how in the hell do I get to Antarctica? It's like, I'll do whatever I got to do. So it was devastating for me, this length of separation of not seeing her on a regular basis, talking to her and stuff. It took me a while to get over it because there were times I just break down. I just shoot.
I'm not sure you are over it as much as you manage it.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that's a good distinction, Doug.
And I would interject here, because if I were to say what I think is the most important thing I was able to provide for my kids, other than trying to be a good example, was time. Mm-hmm. As much as when I worked a lot, but I've worked off-duty jobs after midnight at 11 o'clock at night and whatever, but I was there for my kids. I don't ever recall missing a ball game, missing an event, taking them to the park, taking them on vacations, even though I couldn't afford them back then, or taking walks with them. Just being there with them was probably more valuable than anything I could have bought them. Yeah. And all you wanted to do is be with your daughter. You want to do is be with your daughter. And, as many fathers that are willfully absent in their kids' lives, you got the one guy here that wants nothing more than to be with a child, and it's been denied you. Just like I said a minute ago, it breaks my heart for you, and makes it ache on your behalf.
Yeah, she's my little buddy, man.
Well, that's a wound, that you have to tend to carefully and be mindful of it. If I had an advice to you as a brother here, as an hermano, just give yourself enough room to breathe with it, be with it. Don't collapse into the content much, as best as you can. Keep loving, man. Just keep loving whoever's around you. That is healing in itself, even if they're not your own kids, or just love in general, and that can soothe and ease the sorrow you feel around that. I mean, I don't know who she is or what she's about. I wanted to connect with my father in different ways at different stages of my life as different questions came up. And I know you'll be available if she does decide to do that. She knows that, right? So that's one thing you left her. Regardless of where she ends up, she knows that you left the door open for her. That's a gift.
Yeah, I write her fairly regularly, cards and letters, send gifts. Every so often I would just pop up and be there. And I've talked to her, tried to talk to her mother. I talked to her mother's husband. That was something Doug told me to do. He said, stop being a butthead and treating this guy like a butthead. Talk to this man.
Yeah, because you're in a relationship. You're both bringing up this other human being into it.
Right. And Albert, I didn't want that, because I have a little jealous streak in me. It's like, she's my baby.
Oh, got it.
I don't, I'm daddy, period. That kid, man, I was so proud of her. Yeah. And that to me was like a major blessing that I could be this child's father. So daggone proud of that kid. Still am, I'm just but I'm horribly jealous like that. I don't know how I'm going to act if I'm at her wedding. And they say, well, who's going to give this bride away? And I said, well, damn it, I ain't going to do it. Wait, hold up. Just wait a minute. I'm not ready for that. Yeah. But so I did talk to the man, and I told him too. And I mentioned you, Doug. I said, my old buddy told me I was an idiot. Stop being an idiot. And I apologized to him. And I would ask him about Sarah, and he claimed he didn't know why she won't speak to me. That's what he says. He keeps consistently saying that. But he says, yes.
He may be stepping away from it because it's between you and Lorleen. And Alberto, my take on this is I do believe there's been parental alienation on Lorleen's part. I can't think of any other reason why she would suddenly do a 180 and not want to spend time with her father. So my advice has always been to Corbin, send her the cards, send her the birthday gifts, send her they may all get thrown away. They may go in a box. But hopefully one day she's going to open her mind and realize, this man never gave up on me, no matter how many times I said I don't want to see him. This man tried to be with me and tried to be a father, whether for whatever reason I didn't allow him. And then maybe if she's ever open to having that relationship, that's going to be a bridge she can walk across. All those letters and calls and gifts and phone and postings. And, if you look in his chess website, her pictures are there when she was playing chess with him. So that's my only hope, is that will be the bridge she walks across back to you one day, Corbin.
Yeah. Guys, we're gonna wrap up here. My editor is gonna get upset with me, and he's gonna swear up and down on how to tell time. We've been talking for close to an hour.
No, went fast.
I feel we're just getting started, but let's hang out again and talk more about this either privately or let's take this. Fatherhood is such a big topic, man. I mean, it's cosmic, the sun, it's cosmic, it's political, it's huge. It's really
it is. And let me just throw in there, I think I've failed many times. And what I would want as a father, people might say, oh no, you've been a great dad. But there are things I look back on, I could have handled that differently. I was too easy here. I was too hard there. I mean, there's no, I guess there are books on it, but there's no perfect roadmap. And you literally can treat, you think I'm treating all my kids the same. Why are they turning out differently, or why we have different relationships? It's just because they're individuals with different essences and minds and hearts and souls. And so you just try to navigate it the best you can using the moral and spiritual compass that's within you as a guide. And you don't always get it right. And you got to be able to forgive yourself for that. And that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, I know we're gonna cut, and probably some of this won't make it to the podcast. But obviously, Doug and I love you, brother, and want medicine for you in the way I speak about things. And, part of that medicine is self-forgiveness. I mean, that's it might not be just one episode of you sitting down and acknowledging what you think. It could have been different the way, it's just you have to do it over time, several times. I mean, because that's freedom. I mean, there's all kinds of freedom, right?
Right.
Political freedom, but there's also soul freedom and spiritual freedom. And part of that, getting to that kind of ease with your life is forgiving yourself. But exactly what Doug said. Nobody really knows. I mean, the map is not the territory. There's books, but so what? Okay, maybe this, maybe that, but learning to know that hey, this is what I knew at the time, and this is what I did at the time. Now I don't any longer think that or think like that, and forgive myself. But that's medicine, bro.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. Guys, we're going to wrap up here. This is Kentucky Fathers, and I want to thank Albert and Doug for doing this. And, Albert, I think you're right. Maybe some time in the future, we need to do a part 2 on this subject. Because, man, that hour did go by fast. Yep. We did cover a lot.
And I also think just let's hang out on Zoom when everybody's got a time and just kick back. And, man, look, man, we're ancient. We have lived through epochs and all kinds of stuff, man. Let's sit on our mountain here and look back and go, whoa, did you see that one? What the hell?
Yeah.
I think we all respect and love each other where we can just appreciate the perspectives we're all seeing,
Right.
Los amo a ambos. Los amo a ambos todos, mis hermanos.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
it.
I hope you ain't talking about my sister, man. Guys,
talking about Dawn, Corbin.
Guys, I got to get. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you guys again.
Thank
And
you.
I want to thank my my listeners. And please, in the comment section, just put some things out there and let me know if my listeners out there think that I should bring these two guys back together and we continue. We do a part 2 on our discussion on fathers and fatherhood.